In this week's Parsha Yitro, God gives Israel the Ten Commandments. Interestingly, to introduce this giving, the Torah uses God's name or aspect of Elokim. Vaydaber Elokim et kol hadvarim ha'ila lemor. There are many different understandings of what the name Elokim means. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs posits that when the Torah calls God Elokim, it is referring to God in his role as the universal God, the God of everyone. Conversely, when the Torah calls him Hashem, it means that God is in his special role of the God of Israel. This is a very interesting thesis, yet the implication of this interpretation would yield a radically new understanding for the giving of the Ten Commandments. It would mean that God wasn't giving the Ten Commandments just to Israel, but he meant it to be for the entire world. Can this be true? We know that God gave Israel 613 commandments, and to the Gentile world he only gave 7 Noahide laws. On the one hand, the Noahide laws do not include the Shabbat or some of the other laws that are found in the Ten Commandments. And on the other hand, the Noahide laws do contain laws that are not part of the Ten Commandments. So how can Rabbi Sachs' thesis that God's name Elokim refers to God as a universal God even make sense for the giving of the Torah? Chazal teach us that the Ten Commandments are divided into 2 sets of commandments, those between man and God and those between man and man. The set of commandments that are between man and man consist, for example, of no murder, no adultery, no theft, no false testimony, etc. If these commandments aren't directly part of the Noahide laws, there are definitely corollaries to them. These are laws that help allow for a well-functioning and just and moral society. Laws like these should apply not just to Jewish society, but to any and all. These laws should be considered universal and very much be applicable to all nations. The set of commandments that are between man and God contains details that are very Jewish and can only be meant for an Israelite and not a Gentile. Whom else besides for Israel did God take out from Egypt, or commanded to rest on the Shabbat? Moreover, in contrast to the commandments between man and man, which are all short and to the point, each of the commandments that are between man and God have some details and or explanation that go along with it. This extra wordiness is hinting to us that there also needs to be a framework for the commandments to exist in. For example, the Shabbat is not just about the laws of Shabbat, but also about organizing ourselves around God's calendar as characterizing creation, meaning that God's week consists of 7 days, no more and no less. This would enable the Shabbat to come about, as now it makes sense to say that 6 days can be working days and 1 can be taken as a day of rest. As such, we see that these commandments between man and God are multi-layered. One layer is the details for keeping them, which is clearly intended for Israel. But another layer is the creation of a framework that enables Israel to keep these details. As we see from the Shabbat, this framework does not need to be Israel-centric and can be followed by anyone. So we see that Rabbi Sachs' thesis actually works here, and when applied, teaches us an important lesson about the Ten Commandments. Even if the details themselves aren't applicable to everyone, the ideas that underlay the Ten Commandments are universal for all people, and if followed, will help inspire the creation of godly societies, hopefully preparing the world for that one day, as described by Zechariah, that God will be king over all the world. On that day God will be one, and his name will be one. Shabbat Shalom.